Kész. Most már elkezdte?
Most a fel.
Igazítsd meg. Följebb. De most már megy, ugye?
Is it going now?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going.
All right. So we're done with that pronounce to all of our Vaishnava listeners, physically present and virtually present. So, by the suggestion of Sudamaya Didi, we're going to go to Bhagavad Gita. I always feel a little intimidated by Bhagavad Gita because it is one of our fundamental scriptures, and there are so many valuable commentaries which have been made for this holy text. So we feel like there's a lot to live up to when we're going through Bhagavad Gita. And then on the other hand, also Bhagavad Gita is for everybody, really for everybody, for devotees, for non-devotees. So there's a mix in Bhagavad Gita. So it's not like for example, by contrast, Prapana Jivanamrita, it's like you're eating ice cream. It's just pure nectar, pure sweetness. But Bhagavad Gita, there's something for everyone. So some other flavors are in there as well. However, our Bhagavad Gita is very special because it is given with a purely devotional interpretation. So actually Bhagavad Gita can be read on two levels. It can be read in kind of like the more standard way, looking at this path, looking at this path, looking at that path, Gyan, Karma, Yoga. But there's another layer of Bhagavad Gita where you can interpret everything according to bhakti. You can take any verse from anywhere, pretty much, and you can apply it with a devotional interpretation. So there's two layers of understanding, two layers of interpretation in the Gita. And it's Gurudev emphasized the importance of reading it because it gives foundational spiritual principles, because sometimes, especially ourselves, we're a little spoiled in Chaitanya Samhat. We've been given such fine conclusions by Srila Sridhar Maharaj, by Srila Govinda Maharaj. So we're a little spoiled, and sometimes, we can be flying high with all of these wonderful conceptions, but we forget about the fundamental things. We forget about the ABCs. So, you are not this body. Like this is the first lesson of Bhagavad Gita. This is important for us to remember. And also principles of karma yoga are very helpful because they're like by karma yoga I mean selfless action. That principle is emphasized in Bhagavad Gita. And this is like a kind of like a building block of bhakti. It's like a foundational idea that is encompassed within bhakti. So that is another thing which is, like a foundational conception, which is very helpful for us to remind ourselves with. So that's another thing. And it's, Bhagavad Gita is also very helpful in trying to share Krishna consciousness with others because, many people, maybe they don't know anything about the Vedas, they don't know anything about Krishna consciousness, but the chances are that they've heard of Bhagavad Gita. So if you say, oh, Bhagavad Gita says this, then they'll listen. If you say, oh, my Gurudev, or Srimad Bhagavatam, or Chaitanya Charitamrita, or Mahaprabhu, they won't know what you're talking about. It won't mean anything. But if you say in Bhagavad Gita it says, then they'll be interested. It's a reference point that they can relate to. So for preaching purposes, it's also good to be acquainted with, be familiar with Bhagavad Gita. And Gurudev, he would joke how like everybody likes Bhagavad Gita. Like he was saying, even like anarchists, Like they keep a copy of Bhagavad Gita with them, you know, like terrorists, they'll keep a copy. Everybody finds something in there, you know, that, oh yes, this is something for me. Everybody finds something in there for them. And you know, also many Western philosophers and writers, you know, they've quoted Bhagavad Gita. And Gurudev would also mention Oppenheimer, this German scientist, when he saw that they were doing a test for the first nuclear bomb, and when he saw the explosion, he quoted this verse describing Krishna's universal form. You know, brighter than 10 million suns in the sky, something like this. He quoted that, like he was so familiar with Bhagavad Gita. So it's a wonderful, like a point of connection with people in the world. You know, everybody can appreciate Bhagavad Gita. Okay, those are my preliminary thoughts. And also I was going to mention, you know, Bhagavad Gita, because it can be a point of controversy, the fact that Bhagavad Gita takes place on a battlefield. You know, some, especially like in our current like cultural climate in the world, there's, you know, more and more people who are against war, you know, and they see how much exploitation. So it bothers some people that it takes place on a battlefield. I remember when I was in Brazil a few years ago, there was a talk about Bhagavad Gita, and I didn't know. I was just coming, this is like when I first started coming out of India, and I didn't know this was a sensitive point, and somebody asked me about that in the audience, and I didn't know this was like an issue, you know. So I was giving some kind of, I gave some kind of answer, and later the devotees who organized the program, they told me that they were very nervous because they knew I didn't know it was an issue, and they were worried, oh, maybe she'll say something, they'll get very upset, you know. But it was okay. It was okay. But anyway, to cover that, we can say, you know, I mean, first of all, the main point is that the background of Bhagavad Gita, that's not the point at all. It's just, it's the background. It's like I'm trying to think, there's like a word in literature, but you know, the background is just, it's facilitating the conversation. You know, it's not about a battlefield. It's not about a battle. It's about like eternal, you know, Bhagavad Gita is about eternal spiritual teachings. And the circumstance is just something which is facilitating this conversation. So that's the main point. It's inconsequential what the background is. It is the discussion that is important. So that's the main point to be made in this regard. The other, well, actually more fundamental to that is the fact that we are all spirit soul. We are not this body. And so this is the first teaching, right, that Krishna gives in response to Arjuna's lamentation. You know, like, why are you crying over the prospect of these persons dying? They cannot die. They're all spirit souls. They're eternal. So there's no question of them dying. That's really the first point. And then the second point is that it's nothing to do with the conversation. What was I going to say just now? Nothing to do with the conversation. And oh yeah, and then also related to that, I can add, the real battle is within us, really. You know, Bhagavad Gita is taking place on a battlefield, but what is the teaching of Bhagavad Gita? The real fight is within. No, the real enemy is within. You know, the Srila Maharaj describes this as you know, what makes Bhagavad Gita so valuable, because it's teaching us that the environment is your friend. The environment is favorable. You need to adjust yourself. Don't try to adjust the environment. Try to adjust your own self. So the real battle, the real fight is within the plane of ego, within our own selves. And then And then lastly, I can say more from a relative point of view regarding the battlefield as a background, that, this isn't like an ordinary war. This is a, there's like a name for it, but it's like a it's based upon principles of dharma, principles of religion and justice. And they're following codes given in the scriptures. And it's a battle of righteousness. And so therefore it is said that anyone who dies in such a battle, they will all go to the heavenly planets afterwards. So there's a famous verse here where Krishna is saying, actually, whatever happens, you're going to win. It's a win-win situation. If you lose, you win, because you'll go to heaven. And if you win, then you'll enjoy heaven on earth. So that's another consideration. This isn't like a war, like the kind of wars that we see nowadays in the world, which are about, much lower things. It's a battle of justice. It's not the same. It's not the kind of exploitation. It's not based on the kind of exploitation that we see today. Okay, well, I guess that's all I have to say is like an introduction. And we can start from the very beginning. We'll start with the Mangala Charanam, auspicious invocation. And then we can also hear the introductory pieces by our gurus. So do you have in the ISKCON edition there, the Mangala, we can chant it together? Okay, well, I'll just chant this. You can maybe chant along, you have our Mad edition. Om Partaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharate Advaitam Rita Varshinam Bhagavatam Ashtadasya Jayinam Ambatam Anusandadami Bhagavad Gita Bhava Veshinam Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Fulada Vinda Yatra Patra Nature Yena Tvaya Bharata Koila Purna Prajvalito Jnana Maya Pradipa. Those are the first two verses. I'll read the translations. So the first verse, meditation on Sri Gita. O Bhagavad Gita, song of the Supreme Lord Himself, you are the bestower of Arjuna's enlightenment. You have been woven into the scripture Mahabharata by the ancient sage Srila Vedavyas. In 18 chapters, you are the rain of ever-flowing nectar, non-different from the Lord. O Mother, I meditate upon you. May you graciously enter my heart. And the second verse, obeisances unto Srila Vyasadeva. O Srila Vyasadeva of formidable intelligence, whose eyes resemble the long petals of the blooming lotus flower, and who ignited the lamp of knowledge filled with the oil of the Mahabharata, I offer my obeisances unto you. Prapana parijataya totra vetraika panaye jnana mudraya krishnaya gitamrita duhe namaha. Obeisances unto the Lord as the chariot driver of Arjuna. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, who fulfills the wishes of his surrendered devotees. He holds a driving rod in one hand, while the other is poised in the expression of instruction. And he is the milker of the nectar of the Gita. And, we can add here, and a few things we can add here. One thing is that Gurudev very much liked this image of Krishna in this role of the chariot driver and in this mode of instruction to Arjuna. And in fact, he requested, in at least 2 cases I know of, he requested an image to be made of this and put up near the entrance of our temples. He requested that in our Navadvip temple outside of the centenary building dedicated to Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And then also in San Jose, he requested that to Kumkum. deity. Highlighting the importance of the teachings given in Bhagavad Gita, primarily given by the Lord himself. But also this image of the Lord is very, very sweet, because Krishna, the Supreme Lord, he takes the humble position of a chariot driver, which in modern terms that would be a taxi driver or a chauffeur. It's a very humble position to take. So the fact that he's taken this role out of love for his devotee is so beautiful, it's so wonderful. And in fact, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's one section describing when Mahaprabhu is visiting South India, and he comes across this one Vaishnava, a simple Vaishnava, uneducated, almost illiterate Vaishnava. But every day he's reading Bhagavad Gita in a temple and crying. And he can't read properly, but he's every day reading and crying. And the local people would make fun of him. Like he's practically illiterate. What is he doing trying to read this? And so Mahaprabhu asked him one day, like why are you reading? You can't read properly. Maybe he can read a little, I'm not sure, but practically illiterate. So Mahaprabhu asked him, why are you reading Bhagavad Gita every day when you can't read, actually? And also, why are you crying so much while you're reading? And that Vaishnava told Mahaprabhu that, my Gurudev told me to read Bhagavad Gita every day. So I'm doing that, And he said, the reason I'm crying is because, as I'm going through the Bhagavad Gita, I'm just thinking to myself how wonderful it is that Krishna has come as a chariot driver. He's driving his own devotee. This is so sweet. This is so touching. So, like on one level, you can say this is the most beautiful aspect of the Bhagavad Gita. Like one way one devotee put it that I liked is, Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't deal with rasa. It doesn't deal with the relation, the sweetness in Krishna Bhakti. It doesn't deal with the relationships that Krishna has with his devotees. Bhagavad Gita is more giving like foundational theological principles, right? But here is the rasa, like this loving exchange between the Lord and his devotee. So in one way you can see that as the most wonderful thing about Bhagavad Gita. So it is a very beautiful image. The Lord coming to serve his devotees out of love. And of course the background of that is also nice to remember, that because Krishna had this wonderful army, right, in Dwarka, and when it was finally decided this battle is going to take place, then Duryodhana's side, they rushed to Krishna to ask him, right? Everybody knows the story. They wanted his army. I think there was a name. Isn't there a name, special name for the army or the soldiers? I can't remember. But anyway, so Duryodhana's side, they came to Krishna to try to get this army, and Arjuna came just to ask Krishna for his help in a broader sense, and then they arrived more or less at the same time. But hang on now, I think Duryodhana arrived first, right? But he stood at Krishna's head. And then Arjuna arrived, but he stood at Krishna's feet. So when Krishna woke up, he saw Arjuna first. Does that sound like the right sequence of events? I think so. But anyway, so it was like a bit of a tricky thing, because they both arrived more or less at the same time to ask for Krishna's help. So the way that Krishna handled it is he said, well, I saw Arjuna first. No, sorry. Krishna said, I've already decided that I personally will not fight. because that would not be fair, right? Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, engages in that's like a predetermined result. Like, it's just not fair. So Krishna said, I've already decided I'm not going to fight this battle. However, I can act as an advisor. I can give support. So he said, so one of you I'll give my army, and the other one I can be your supporter, your friend, your guide, advisor, like that. And then Krishna gave Arjuna the first choice because he'd seen him first. And Arjuna, of course, he chose Krishna. I just want you, Krishna. He wasn't thinking about, the power and the glory. He just wanted Krishna as his friend. And it's very funny because Duryodhana was very happy. And Arjuna was also very happy. Duryodhana thought, Arjuna, you're such an idiot. Like, you could have had Krishna's powerful army. Instead, you chose Krishna, who's not even going to fight, So Arjuna was happy. Duryodhana was happy. Yes, we got the army. And Arjuna was happy. I just want Krishna's friendship. It's a very nice example of how, the Lord can make everybody happy. Whether your desires are material or spiritual, He can satisfy everyone in one arrangement. So anyway, this is the background. So then Krishna said he will act as the chariot driver of Arjuna, and in that capacity, he's seeing everything going on, and he can do some string pulling behind the scenes and give advice, and which is like Krishna in Dwarka, he has that kind of mood, like he's somewhat involved like in politics and diplomacy and all of this type of stuff. Okay, so we can move on from here to the next verse. That was number 3. Sarvo Panishado Gavo Dogda Gopalanandana Parto Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitam Ritam Mahat. The glories of the Gita. The crest jewels of the Vedas. All the Upanishads are as the cow, and the milker of the cow is Lord Shri Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj. Arjuna is the calf, the nectar of the Gita is the milk, and the fortunate devotees are the enjoyers of that milk. So this is a very nice verse, and this verse is fairly well known compared to these other verses of invocation. Gurudev liked this verse, and it's a wonderful analogy. We can unpack it a little bit. So first of all, we can mention the Upanishads here. They're described as the crest jewels of the Vedas. The Upanishads, they have a very special position within the Vedas, and the reason for that is that they are dealing, they're not telling history, they're not telling Leela, which of course Leela is the divine play of the Lord, is the highest thing, but for persons of a lower understanding, it just looks like stories, right? So the Upanishads, they're dealing exclusively with abstract spiritual principles. It's dealing with the plane of spirit in this kind of very broad and abstract way. So for scholars, it is very impressive, like for example, like Gurudev would always use this verse as an example, describing the Lord as describing the Supreme, that He is the most near, He is the most far, He has no legs, but He can move faster than anyone, has no ears but can hear everything, and describing the nature of the soul, and these kind of like as I said, abstract spiritual principles, and so the kind of thing that scholars can appreciate and get excited about, they're not dealing with, because a lot of the Vedas is dealing with things of this world. And then other parts are dealing with specific deities, or Leela, or telling histories. So like scholars, they can be a bit snobbish about those things. Like, oh, these are for less intelligent people. We're dealing with like the real stuff. So the Upanishads, they have like a place of special regard, amongst like general scholars. So you'll see they're often referred to as the crown jewels of all the Vedas. So the Upanishads. So here this analogy is given that the Upanishads are like a cow, and the milker of the cow is Krishna, and Arjuna is the calf, because the cow, the mother cow, has to have a baby as a calf, right? To induce her to give milk, right? So Arjuna is like the calf, and the Gita is the milk. So in other words, like all of the spiritual instruction given in the Upanishads, the essence of that, the best part of that, is Bhagavad Gita. And that's being given by Krishna, who's the milker, and Arjuna is the person who's facilitating that. Actually, this is another point to remember. Arjuna, he's actually a pure devotee of Krishna. Arjuna knows everything, but for the purpose of this teaching coming out, he's put under the influence of Yoga Maya, the Lord's spiritual energy, and causing this type of ignorance. So Arjuna is really inquiring on our behalf. Arjuna is put in this position for our benefit. Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he gives one example in one of his purports of Bhagavad Gita, a very, very like Indian Vedic example of how, because in the Indian tradition, when a woman marries, then she'll move to her husband's house, right? So then there's like this interesting new relationship that the daughter-in-law has with her mother-in-law and everyone else, right? So Swami Maharaj Prabhupada said, sometimes the mother-in-law, she'll want to give instruction to her daughter-in-law, but because the relationship is not so close, then she feels uncomfortable to directly tell her, do this, don't do this, what are you doing? So instead, the mother-in-law may tell one of her own children this instruction in the vicinity of her daughter-in-law. So she's really telling her daughter-in-law, but in an indirect way. So in the same way, Krishna is giving this instruction ostensibly to Arjuna, but actually it's for us. It's for us. So then the next part, the fortunate devotees are the enjoyers of that milk. So the blessed souls hearing Gita, they're the drinkers of that sweet milk of Gita. It's a very nice example, very nice analogy given here. Okay, so the next verse. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanara Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Let's see where we are here. Obeisances unto Lord Shri Krishna. I bow unto the lotus feet of Shri Krishna, the son of Vasudeva, the vanquisher of the demons, Kamsa and Shanora, the joy of Mother Devaki, and the universal teacher. Bhishma Drona Tatta Jaya Jatta Jala Gandhara Nilopala Shalya Grahavati Kripena Vahani Karnena Vela Kula Ashwatthama Vikarna Gora Makara Doryo Dunavartini Totirna Kalupanda Varananadi Kaivartaka Keshava. Translation: the river of the battle of Kurukshetra. So now we have another analogy here. The battle being compared to this river. One bank is Bhishma, the other Dronacharya. So these are all key players in this battle. One bank is Bhishma, the other Dronacharya. Jayadratha is the water, the sons of Gandhari the blue lotus flower, Shalya the crocodile, Kripa the waves, Karna the shore, Ashwatthama, Vikarna and company, the fearful sharks, Duryodhan the whirlpool. So these are all persons who are on the opposing camp to our heroes, the Pandavas. And then Keshava, Krishna, is the boatman of this river of the battle that was crossed by the Pandavas. So there's this fearful river with all these dangerous elements, and Krishna is the boatman taking the Pandavas safely across this river. And then the next verse. Padasharya vacha sarojam amalam gitarta gandotkatam nanakyanaka kesaram harikata sambodhana bodhitam loke sajana shatpader harha pepiyamanam muda uyad bharata pankajam kalimala pradvamsina shreyase. The Mahabharata as a lotus flower. These words of Sri Krishna Dvaipayan Vyasadeva, the son of Parashar Muni, are a perfect lotus flower. The meaning of the Gita is the beautiful fragrance of this lotus. The various episodes are its stamens, and the enlightening narrations about the Supreme Lord are its nectar. In this world, the pure devotees are the bees who day after day delight in drinking the nectar of the lotus flower. May this Mahabharat lotus, the vanquisher of all evils in this age of Kali, graciously bestow auspiciousness upon us. I'll read this again. It's a very beautiful analogy. These words of Sri Krishna Dvaipayan Vyasadeva, the son of Parashar Muni, are a perfect lotus flower. The meaning of the Gita is the beautiful fragrance of this lotus. The various episodes are its stamens, and the enlightening narrations about the Supreme Lord are its nectar. In this world, the pure devotees are the bees who day after day delight in drinking the nectar of the lotus flower. May this Mahabharat lotus, the vanquisher of all evils in this age of Kali, graciously bestow auspiciousness upon us. And then the last two verses. Yam Brahma Varunendra Ruja Maruta Stunvanti Divyaistaver Vedai Sangha Parakramo Pashanider Gayantiya Samaga Dhyana Vashtita Tadgatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yogino Yasyantam Navidu Surasuragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. I offer obeisances unto the Supreme Lord. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, whose glories are sung with celestial prayers by the gods Brahma, Varuna, Indra, Rudra, and the Maruts, whose glories are sung by the verses of the Vedas, along with their 6 auxiliary books and the Upanishads, whose glories are sung by the Brahmins that sing the Samaveda, who the yogis see within their hearts absorbed in meditation, and whose infinite glories are inconceivable to all beings, whether gods or demons. And the very last verse, Narayanam namaskritya nadam chaiva narotamam devam saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayat. Before reciting the scriptures that can conquer material existence, we offer obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, who is known as Narayan, Nara, and Narottam, the goddess of learning Saraswati, and the great sage empowered by the Lord to reveal the scriptures, Srila Vyasadeva. Okay, so this is the Mangala Charanam, auspicious invocation to Bhagavad Gita. And you know, this is always the approach when we are coming to read spiritual literature. You know, we're not just, you know, diving in with our mind and senses, but we are first invoking the grace of our guardians. You know, we are praying for their grace because we understand that we can only grasp anything of this by the mercy of the Lord, by the mercy of Guru and Vaishnava. Otherwise, we can, we're not just interested. We are not just interested in acquiring a theoretical understanding of what is here. We're not coming like academic scholars at a university, which many people do. That field is open for anyone who wants to take it. And you can, there's many interesting things in here to talk about, But that's not exactly what we're interested in. We're interested in the flow of grace that is available here and the real revelation that is available here. We want this to not just be something here in our heads, but to be something that is revealed in our hearts and becomes manifest in a living and dynamic and vital way in our lives. So therefore, this approach is absolutely essential, that we are first praying for the grace, for the mercy of the Lord, of the great saints, Guru, Vaishnava, and pray, invoking their mercy, and then by their grace we can understand something will be revealed to us in the most authentic sense. So we are always making these prayers before we come to study any sacred text. Okay, so then we also have a short preface by our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, and there's also a short introduction by our grandfather Guru, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. We can go through that also today. So this is publisher's note to the first Bengali edition, appearance day of Lord Krishna, 1961. Unique in its wide publication and extensive circulation, the Srimad Bhagavad Gita appears in various languages, both in India and other countries, along with the commentaries of former great saints as well as modern scholars. The commentaries of the prominent Vaishnava acharyas such as Sri Ramanuja, Srimad Madhva Muni, and Sri Sridhar Swamipad are most notable, whilst amongst the proponents of Jnana Marg, or the monistic path, the commentaries of Srimad Shankaracharya and Sri Madhusudan Saraswati are well known. The commentaries of Sri Yukta Bala Gangadhar Tilak and Sri Aurobindo favor the school of Karma Yoga, or the path of action, and are also familiar to modern scholars. Great thinkers of both East and West have ardently sung the glories of Sri Gita, being inspired by the ideals of its teachings. However, the Achincha Beda Bed Siddhanta, theology of inconceivable oneness and difference, as revealed by the proponents of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaudiya Acharya Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti and Sri Baladev Vijayabhushan, is concluded by the learned devotees to be most favorable to exclusive devotion. The devotees also embrace Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bengali commentary of Sri Gita as a harmonious spiritual mine of the treasure of divine love for Sri Krishna, Krishna Prema, the fifth and transcendental goal of life, beyond the four general human objectives of religion, wealth, sense enjoyment, and liberation. So, there are many, many editions of Gita. Gurudev mentioned also that when he first went to join the Math in 1947, right? Srila Sridhar Maharaj mentioned him at that time. There are over 800 different editions of Bhagavad Gita. And this is 1947. I mean, now, in the world today, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, you can't say, there's actually like some fashion nowadays, like for someone to make their own commentary. We came across a few persons like that. Oh yes, I'm making my own edition, my own commentary. There's some fashion even like that. So we can't say how many editions there are. However, there are only a few which are, as we said at the beginning, the Bhagavad Gita is so broad, so it's open to so much interpretation. It's open to so many different schools of thought. So persons of all different types of thought, they're interested in and commenting upon Bhagavad Gita. However, there are very few which are coming in this line, at this particular conception. Not only the angle of bhakti, going purely to bhakti already narrows it down a lot, But then more specific is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's. There's bhakti, and then there's the Vaishnava line, and then there's Mahaprabhu's line, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it is, it's a specific, very refined conception which our gurus have, and this Gita is coming in that line. So there are a few editions which are, following that. In his introduction, my worshipful divine master, Shri Guru Pada Padma Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivajakacharya Shri Srimad Bhakti-Raksha Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj has revealed to the readers glimpses of his own deep devotional realizations. Although numerous editions of Shri Gita are presently available, few commentaries can be said to nurture pure devotion according to the teachings of the bona fide divine succession, which has given us the opportunity of service in producing this edition. We shall consider ourselves blessed if the fortunate readers take the all-auspicious essence of this sincere attempt to heart. Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda, Shri Chaitanya Saraswati Mahaprabhu. So that's our Gurudev's short preface, and then we can conclude with this introduction given by Srila Sridhar Maharaj, our grandfather Guru. Vande Shivu Gaurango Radha Govinda Sundaro Saguno Giyate Chata Gita Gudarta Gauravam. Bowing down to the holy feet of Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga, and Shri Radha Govinda Sundar, all accompanied by their associates, I sing the glories of the hidden treasure of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Since Srimad Bhagavad Gita is very familiar to the learned society, an acquaintance of the conceptions of this edition may be given here. We are followers of the school of thought descending from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this edition is based on the Sri Gita commentaries of the preeminent exalted Sri Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas, Sri Vishwanath, Sri Baladev, and Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. By the grace of our worshipful spiritual master, Om Vishnu Pad Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada, and from indications in the commentaries given by the aforementioned great pure devotees, in places some new light has been shed, revealing deeper meanings. The devoted reader will appreciate this, particularly with regard to the 4 verses which were described by Sri Vishwanath Pad as the 4 essential verses of the book, the Chatushloki in chapter 10. Generally, Sri Gita is known as an excellent study of the science of religion. The language of Sri Gita is simple and sweet. Its mood is grave, extensive, and radical. Its thought is succinct, lucid, and impartial, and its logic is sound and natural. The eloquence of the prologue, epilogue, exposition, review, analysis, synthesis, and delivery of Sri Gita is unprecedented and charming in the extreme. Sri Gita is activation for the lazy, courage for the fearful, hope for the hopeless, and new life for the dying. Sri Gita unifies and sustains all ranks, whether revolutionary, occultist, optimist, renunciationist, liberationist, or full-fledged theist. From the atheist of grossly crude vision to the most elevated saints, the essential conceptions of all classes of philosopher are illustrated with clear and powerful logic. It's so wonderful. Very wonderfully expressed. The devotees of the Lord, Bhagavad Bhaktas, and persons on the paths of action, knowledge, and yoga, karmis, jnanis, and yogis, will each find the essence of their paths dealt with in a comprehensive and illuminating manner. and thus the book is highly esteemed by all. The essential and inner purport of the Vedas and Upanishads of the Aryans is directly explained, and the essence of various non-Aryan doctrines can also be found. Sri Gita teaches us enlightenment through the selfless execution of scripturally ordained actions. When the consciousness is thus purified, self-realization or spiritual realization is attained. In its maturity, this pure realization blossoms into loving service in the joyful divine flame. From the standpoint of Sambandha Gyan, or knowledge of relationship, Sri Gita gives us the conception that the absolute reality is a transcendental personality. From the standpoint of prayojan, or the objective, spiritual love for the absolute reality is given as the highest attainment. And from the standpoint of abhideya, or the means, we are taught that one must initially offer all his actions to the Supreme Lord, followed by the cultivation of self-realization favorable to realization of the Lord, and finally surrender to the Lord, to the exclusion of all other endeavors. Ultimately, the means will culminate in the objective, when, in one's perfected spiritual form, one wholeheartedly engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Sri Gita has clearly shown the distinctions between the various paths, such as the path of action, including worship of the gods for worldly fulfillment, and the path of knowledge for the attainment of liberation. The thoughtful reader can note that Sri Gita, by its comparative study, refutes the misconception that the many paths and goals are all one. Rather, it is stated, Yo yak shraddha sa eva sa, a man is known by his faith. These verses would warrant deep consideration in this respect. The yogi is superior to persons engaged in austerities, superior to the person of knowledge, and superior to the person of action. Therefore, O Arjuna, be a yogi. And best of all yogis is my faithful devotee for whom I am the only goal, and who serves me wholeheartedly. This is my opinion. Showing the inferiority and meaninglessness of dry renunciation, the gift of Sri Gita is most substantial and positive. Rather than merely renouncing action, one should selflessly offer one's actions to the Supreme Lord, Karma Yoga. Ultimately, based on one's surrender, one will be inspired to act in devotion, bhakti, for the Lord alone. This is the conclusive and sublime teaching of Sri Gita. In the finest conception, the overall excellence of Sri Gita is found in its gift of devotion. In its full manifestation, such devotion is prema bhakti, loving devotion to the all-attractive Supreme Personality, Sri Krishna, reality the beautiful. Secret, more secret, and the most secret of all teachings have been given, as the congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord, Sankirtan, and service in spontaneity, bhava seva, with exclusive surrender and dedication, the transcendental pleasure of Krishna as the ultimate goal of life, as sung by the vibrant clarion call of Sri Gita, Sarvadharmam prijyaja mamekam sharanam vraja, and is deeply contemplated by the followers of the lotus footsteps of the Supreme Lord, who mercifully appears as the savior in this age of Kali, Sri Chaitanya Chandra, and as corroborated by the divine succession of saintly teachers. May Lord Sri Krishna accept the offering of this edition. Swami B.R. Sridhar, Sri Chaitanya Saraswama, Navadip Janmashtami, Bengali year 1368. And that is 1961, I believe, in our modern Western calculation. This is the first Bengali edition, so this has been translated into English. Very beautiful, very, very beautiful. very eloquent, extremely eloquent and concise and beautiful. Okay, well, I think it's a good place to stop. We've had a lot to contemplate, and then we can begin with the main text, starting with chapter 1 next week. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Jai. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Bhakti Raksha Sridhar Dev Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Namaha.
Hari Hari Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Namaha.
Hari Hari Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha.
Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha.
Yadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha.
Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan.
Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Shri Bhakti Rakshak Shridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki jai, Bhagavan Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur ki jai, Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki jai, Saprasad Srimad Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Navadip Dham ki jai, Shri Ganga Jamuna ki jai, Shri Bhakti Devi Vrinda Devi Tulasi Devi ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopi Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai, Jai Shri Gancharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Shri Kol Karta ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Saraswat ki jai, Vishwavyapi Tadya Shaka ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Jai Gaur Vishwakalevi ki jai.